And I'm going to talk just, I'll try to be as brief as I can on the local front. And this is actually a picture of the Cork City Hall, and aren't we all jealous to have a city hall as grand as that one? For those of us who were able to participate in the ASPO conference, it was really a wonderful experience to network with people from around the world who are struggling with the same challenges that we all are. And we've heard a lot, people quote James Schlesinger, who was our keynote speaker there. We've heard his quote, but no one has quoted him on this one, which I particularly liked, that Americans have to be hit over the head with a 2x4. And I would add that we have to be hit over the head repeatedly, and we actually have been hit over the head repeatedly, as you can see from this chart, where we've had major oil disruptions, which have caused, in many cases, significant economic problems in our country. And that each year that passes, the problem gets even worse because the spare capacity shrinks and our ability to overcome that. And I want to talk to you a little bit about, that's right, I threw this in. I was giving a presentation in Arrowhead on Monday, and someone said, but our consumption of energy, though, our per capita consumption is going down, isn't it? And I said, no, I don't think so. So I went up and went up to the EIA and discovered actually it's gone up significantly when you look at how we bumped along in our per capita consumption in the world, and then just in the last couple of years it really has risen dramatically, and that's not a good trend. But I want to talk a little bit about the role of leadership and really distinguish between leadership and authority. Leadership is somebody like Steve Andrews and Randy Udall, somebody who creates a compelling vision and can make it happen. It does not have to be someone, and it often is not someone who's in elected office. Jimmy Carter got out ahead of the people who authorized him. And after the Arab oil embargo or the Iranian crisis, he made some very unpopular programs like the 55-mile-per-hour speed limit. This is when he installed the solar panels on the roof of the White House, and of course we all know when Reagan came in he took them down. But he was absolutely right that when he said that our decision about energy would test the character of the American people, and I think we're just about to find out how much it does test our character. But what happened was that the voters deauthorized him. And that does happen, and in fact it happened in California in 2003 when we had our energy crisis, and Governor Gray Davis was subject to a recall by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and so Gray Davis was also deauthorized by the voters. But it's also amazing, somebody as popular as Arnold Schwarzenegger, somebody who is really, really popular, can do amazing things. And so what he was able to accomplish, I'm sure Gray Davis never could have accomplished in California, which was to pass AB 32, our climate change legislation, which has really started the ball rolling in California, and California is taking the lead for most of the nation. So the question really is whether local elected officials are willing to take the risk of being deauthorized. Or the question is, the real question is, can we govern ourselves? So it's going to take a lot of work to get the people recognizing that, these are the kind of people we want to elect, and we don't want to deauthorize people or taking the risks out there. There are a lot of interesting analogies between government and business, and people are always talking about wanting to make government more like business. I'm not necessarily in agreement with that, but business is often you have to mandate that they do things like seatbelts, airbags. It wasn't until government told them they had to do that. And local government is similarly situated. Local government really doesn't act because of that fear of being deauthorized. They don't act until they're mandated by state government or perhaps by the federal government. So I certainly encourage the state government to make mandates that will actually force us to make the significant changes we have to make. But there are, of course, always the outliers. Volvo was an outlier in the seatbelt arena. They actually had seatbelts in 1849 in their vehicles. And we have cities that are kind of outliers in the peak oil world. Willits, California is one of those. Brisbane, Australia is another one. Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, with their concept of the electric city. And so there are always those outlying communities. However, most of us still are into the business as usual, sprawl, 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 cars, cars. It's very, very difficult to overcome the inertia of the status quo. And if the public can't overcome it themselves, you can't expect the people you elect to do it. It's not like we go to Mars to select elected officials. We pull them from the populace, and we really are representative of the public will, political will, public will, tied very closely together. Here's a good example of that. The California Public Policy Institute does a survey every year of where the people are with regard to environmental issues. And you can see that air quality always ranks really, really high among California voters. They're really concerned about air quality. Well, it's really not surprising, and I want to take a look at the energy one. The energy actually dropped 6% from last year, from 12% to 6%, but climate change grew fairly dramatically. It's really not very surprising when you look at some of the numbers. Google has an interesting little thing called Google Trends, and you can type any phrase in there, and they will show you kind of people who are out there surfing the net. They'll show you, where the activity is in which year. And so if you go there, you can see that Portland is the #1 city for peak oil as a search term on the internet. And it's really no surprising. I got this idea actually from John Theobald from UC Davis, and he's here in the audience, so thank you, John, for this great idea, and it gives you an idea of why the media is so important in this. And so I went up to the Oregonian, which has the highest circulation paper in Oregon, and typed in peak oil, and I got 127 hits. So it's no surprise that Portland was up there at the top, and that Portland is a leader in the nation with regard to this issue. And then, of course, my LA Times, so disappointing, 0 hits. So it's no wonder. And then, of course, the same is true with the climate change discussion. I mean, the tipping point came last year, and no wonder. The movie and Al Gore had such a great impact, and whether you like him or not, it really is immaterial, because it really, as far as I'm concerned, it was the tipping point. And again, you can go to Google Trends and look at the numbers, and you can see, when the movie came out, this huge spike from those people surfing the net. So we have got to get the media more involved in this issue. Now, there are a number of really great initiatives in the country. Mayor Nichols from Seattle, in his U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement, this shows you the number of cities, kind of pinpoints. It's really more of a northeast, the fringes of America. It's more of their kind of thing to do. 691 mayors, 104 in California. I think there are 11 in Texas. That have signed on. And in fact, their conference is going to be the first week in November, so it's coming right up. But you can understand, because they're really avoiding the deauthorization problem. Those elected in the middle of the country don't want to be deauthorized if they go off in the climate arena. And I recognize the hypocrisy in some of what I'm going to say, but this is my world, and I'm going to offer that in Southern California, I have to sell an alternative to climate change quite often. I live in one of the most conservative counties in the country, Orange County, and so my alternative framework is often centered around economics. And one of the things that really hits home is in Middle America would be the economics. And here is an article from U.S. News. 1.2 million U.S. households were disconnected from electric and natural gas service this summer due to failure to pay utility bills. This is going to hit a lot of people very, very hard. And so elected officials should be very concerned about the impacts to their constituents and how they're going to pay their bills. My community is fairly large in most places terms, 200,000 residents, 1,100 employees, 8.5 miles of beach. And by the way, an 8.5 miles of beach that used to be covered with oil wells. Just, you could walk from one rig to the next as recently as the 1960s. And we still have a lot of oil in Huntington Beach, of course, very much depleted. We have 3 oil wells on our City Hall property, which generate 19 barrels a day of oil, but still very profitable, and of course, you know, high energy prices are great. I want to demonstrate to you how vulnerable local government really is, though. Our city has an electric bill of $4 million a year. Our fuel bill is $1 million. You know, you can see how dramatically things can grow if oil goes up, and you know, instead of $3, it's $4. It can grow very, very quickly. And so we really are very vulnerable. And all of the services, we contract out a lot of these services, but trash, we actually consume more fuel in picking up people's garbage and taking it to the dump than all of our city vehicles do combined. It's really an amazing amount. The sewage issue, though, is actually one of good news, because we can generate a lot of electricity off of methane from the sewage treatment plants, which we are doing, and probably within the next few years we'll be totally self-sufficient on energy. But, and then of course water, most people don't think of water as energy, but in California, 10% of our electricity production just goes toward moving water around the state. That's a huge amount of our electricity needs. So there are lots of opportunities for cities to save money, and that's quite often the thing that gets your city to buy in to dealing with the energy constraints that we face. And this is, I just put this in not because I want you to read it or anything. This is an energy audit that I was able to get our staff to do. They hired someone to come in and do a really thorough energy audit, and I think it really opened their eyes up to how much savings they could realize if they implement some of these initiatives. And as a result, we, in this last budget, approved 2 new positions for our city budget, one just to deal with water conservation and one to oversee all of the energy purchases, cars, green building program, all of that for our city. But you do have to have someone in your local office who is interested in pushing the agenda. And then finally, jobs. Jobs are always very important to elected officials. And Europe has done some interesting reports on how much investment is being put into the renewable world. I know that Roger Bezdek has done a great study for the state of Ohio on the number of jobs that can be created in the renewable world. It's really staggering. And they're jobs here at home, and that means the money stays here and the people are employed here. It's really a great way to get the attention of your elected officials. And then finally, next steps. I want to make a recommendation of a book. I picked it up last summer. It's called Life is a Series of Presentations. We should never forget that every time we meet someone, whether it's on the telephone, in an elevator, at the grocery store, it's an opportunity to form a relationship with someone and to talk to them about something that's important to you, and to expand your reach into areas that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. We often as electeds get what I call e-rage emails, and it is just not compelling to me to either read them or to respond to them. But if you take the opportunity to get out of your comfort zone and interact with the people that you elect, and whether they're staff members or whatever, it's amazing once you have a relationship with someone, the amount of change that can occur. So never, try not to burn your bridges. You never know that jerk, down the road may come in handy someday. Just as I was flying home from Ireland, I sat next to a guy who he's actually Irish, but he lives in California. And we had a wonderful conversation, and now he wants to help with the conference that we hope to have in California next year. So I encourage you to avoid the virtual relationships and get out there and actually speak to people, and you can have a tremendous impact in our elected world as well as your own world. So I thank you very much for your attention, and we will